Well, Ryan, I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to speak with me with regard to your book that's just come out, Blood and Treasure. And I have
Thanks,
thoroughly
John.
enjoyed this story. This is such a unique perspective, and the cross genre sort of concept I know is really sort of hot at the moment, and I think you've done it very, very well. Um,
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about your background. I know you were in naval aviation. Is that correct? Could you kind of fill me in a little bit
That's correct.
on that
Sure.
background?
Yeah. I went to college in Hawaii. Worked out there for like 6 years as a dive instructor, and then I joined the Navy on an EOD contract, and then I got a flight slot, so I transitioned over. Went to OCS, and then I went to flight school. Became a helicopter pilot in 2012 on wings, and then HSL 49, which was for my generation and older, the LAMPS community. It's the Light Attack Multi-Purpose Helicopter, the SH-60 Bravo. It's no longer in service. They're fully retired now, and they were designed Cold War era aircraft to fly off frigates, which are also all decommissioned now as well. If anybody wants to know what the H-60 Bravo looks like, it's like a Navy variant of the Black Hawk, and it's in the movie Tears of the Sun. So if you've seen those helicopter Bravos. It was I was trained as a sub hunter, an attack helicopter pilot, but then we didn't do any of tasked to join Interagency Task Force South, and we did counter narcotics mission for my career. So
Oh,
I did
very
three
cool.
three long so I did 3 long deployments to Fourth Fleet District 11 Coast Guard. We partnered with the Coast Guard Special Operations Team and DEA, FBI. The JIADF has representatives from everyone there, and so do the other countries that we operate a lot with: Colombia and Guatemala and Peru, Nicaragua, Panama a lot. And then we had some like European allies down there as well, but we were mainly the only ship. I was down there between 2013 and 2015, and we were kind of the only asset. It was like right in the heart of sequestration. So we were spread pretty thin. We're pretty much on alert 15 all the time. Flew a lot of missions, intercepting, drug boats, go fast vessels, SBSSs, all kinds of tankers. We did a lot of different stuff, tracked boats for arms deals, stuff like that. So I did that, and then I got injured in a emergency landing, and then I fought for the second half of my career to stay status. So I was up and down on flight status. So I went to a shore-based squadron search and rescue unit at Patuxent River, Maryland, and I was up and down on flight status there as a search and rescue instructor. And then I was getting med boarded out of the Navy, so I transitioned over to kind of a niche job. I was working for JAG while I was med down from flying, because I was a history major and I had a master's in history, and so I was kind of at like reading and stuff, and I could write. I could nonfiction. I could write at the time, and they needed somebody who could kind of do that, and I kind of fit. I started doing these investigations, and when you get tasked for an investigation in the military, you're supposed to like kind of do it for the JAG officer and then stop when it goes criminal. They were so overtasked, and the JAG officers were not around, so I got tasked with some that ended up turning criminal. So I had JAG headquarters gave me all these directives, and I had to do them on my own. So I did like rural criminal investigations, like almost pretty much self-trained. But it turned some heads at JAG, and then it turned some heads at NavAir, because I ended up doing a pretty good job at it. And that ended up turning into a follow-on job. So when I was getting out of the Navy, I was offered an opportunity to be a federal investigator on aircraft development contracts. So they
Oh,
needed kind of someone who's a pilot in the Navy, who understands naval aviation and can speak the lingo and knows what to look for to go into these contracts that we pay Lockheed and Boeing and all these millions and hundreds of millions and billions of dollars to build. And I'm what's called a government flight representative. Go into places as the sole representative of the government on the contract. So I speak for the government, I basically investigate, audit, kind of like an NTSB investigator meets an IRS auditor. So you're doing administrative auditing as well, which sounds boring, but a lot of times the evidence for the administrative malfeasance stuff is physical. So you have to know where to look for that kind of stuff. And it's nothing on them. I mean, they're trying to save a buck anywhere they can. No one's looking, so I'm the person with the flashlight that comes in and looks and throttles the money to save taxpayer money. So I did that on 5 years on almost every single contract, from the Joint Strike Fighter to you name it, the MQ-4 Triton to right now, most recently MQ-25, Boeing's new Stingray program. I did UAVs, small UAVs, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, worked on a lot of different programs. Just recently left that position because this second job is getting a little busier. On my weekends and more. So, I needed a job with a little less, a little less responsibility. I don't. Yeah, I mean, well, I said it, it's true. Yeah, a little less responsibility. Now I'm a safety officer at evaluation squadron. So I don't have anybody who can for me anymore. I don't have my mind so thin, all the time, because it's not whatever else. So switched over to now. It's just in transition to that now.
So have you been separated from the Navy for about 5 years now? Is that right?
Yeah. So I was getting medically separated, which takes like 2 years, and I was going to be medically retired. But it takes such a long time, and I was offered. And then when it finally does happen, you have to wait 6 months before you can start a government position. So I was looking at like 2.5 years, and the niche job that I was being offered at the time was a really great opportunity for me, especially since I couldn't fly anymore medically. So I ended up, just while they were retiring me, I just resigned, and then I was able to start that job immediately instead of waiting the cool off period. So I basically got out the last day, January 31st of 2020, and I started on that Monday of February. The job I was kind of already doing at the time.
Well, that's really interesting. I noticed that you were at Thriller Fest this year. Did you have a chance
Yep.
to talk to Don Bentley much?
No, we have met. People have like linked us up here or there. We met actually a long time ago digitally. I had like reached out to him as like a fellow veteran, fellow helicopter pilot, for some advice when I was early on writing, because I was following his career when he just started,
Right.
and he was gracious enough to give me some tips and stuff like that. And we'd always bumped into each other. We bumped into each other like once a year. We'll bump into each other, say hello, but we're always like on our way somewhere else. So I haven't had a chance to sit down and talk with him, but we kind of send each other little jokes back and forth here or there about him being an Apache pilot and me being a Black Hawk or a Seahawk guy.
Well, I was curious about that because of your similar backgrounds, and he's also a former bureau guy, as you know.
Yep.
So I had wondered if you'd had a chance to talk to him at some point during Thriller Fest. So as you know, he's a great guy and always very generous with his time.
Yep.
Which kind of leads me to, so how did the book come about for you? What's your path as an author? I'm really curious about that. Like how
Sure.
where you went from manuscript to, did you do the typical, manuscript, shop it around to literary agents, that sort of a path? Is that kind of what happened with you?
Yes and no. So you want like how I started writing altogether, or just how books? Yeah. So
Yeah. If you wanna start, I mean, I don't know, is this your first manuscript, or were there other?
no,
Yeah.
no. I wrote 5 books and a screenplay before I ever got published.
Oh,
And this was the 4th book of the 5 books that I wrote. And there were 2 Ethan Kane books before this book. And they're all still alive and out there, and everyone's probably going to read them at some point now. But I started writing after I got out. I never wanted to be a writer. Like I'll say that I had no ambition to be a
Really?
writer. I never wrote fiction before, like ever. I read a lot. I read every nonfiction, fiction. I wasn't very widely read fiction reader. I read a lot of who I liked,
Mhm.
and a lot of obscure books too. Like I remember I read like some thriller authors from the early 90s. Like I remember a book called like Ice Fire or something like that. But I read a lot of Clive Cussler. I read almost everything he wrote. I read everything Michael Crichton ever published. I read Dan Brown, and I read a lot of Louis L'Amour actually.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I just read what I liked. So I take a lot of flack. I just said this. That's why I was mentioning the crosstalks on the Jack Carr podcast. That I take a lot of flack in this writer community because I've only ever read one Tom Clancy book. It was never really my thing. It was never really my thing.
Yeah.
And I read that book, rather recently because everyone was like, you got to at least read Hunt for Red October. So, yeah. So, but yeah, I had no ambition to do that. And how I came to writing was really interesting. So, as a helicopter pilot, you know, in my previous life, like a lot of military pilots, I had a lot of brushes with near death, a lot.
Mhm.
Um, and while you're in, they don't really affect you. You have a job to do. You strap in. I've said this before. Like for love of the game, that Kevin Costner movie before he pitches is like turn on the mechanism. Like and you can probably relate to this too. Like you get into a mindset, you flip a switch before you go to work, and you have a job to do, and you put everything else aside. And
Mhm.
that's kind of how it was every time I would climb in the cockpit. You got 18, 19, 20-year-olds in the back, crew of five. You have that big brother responsibility for them, and you're as pilots we were much older, and the enlisted guys that work with us. So and then you become a senior pilot. You have a junior pilot who you're training. They look to you, to be the one with the answers. So you have this mentality, and you're just always on. You're flying every day. Um, even a home, even if it's just a training flight, like a beautiful sunny day, you could die in 3 seconds on takeoff. It's just the
Right.
aircraft does not just pick and choose when it's going to break, and you don't know how it's going to break on you. And in the helicopter community, we're a sneeze and 3 seconds from death at all times if you're not like on your game. And so you just live that way. But I found that after 12 years of doing that, when I stopped flying, they weren't flying anymore, and I was grounded for a extended period of time.
Mhm.
Um, it took about 6-ish months, I would say, but I started to just notice like these changes in myself that weren't positive. And it started with driving at night. So like, I was a helicopter pilot, flew unaided and aided all the time on ships, multitasking in the cockpit, doing 17 different things, radar flying, talking to 3 different radios. All of a sudden, I'm driving a car at night, and I'm coming to an intersection, and there's, lights everywhere and people coming at you in different row. And all of a sudden I don't know what's going on, and I'm super confused, and I'm starting to have panic attacks because I don't, I'm almost getting in accidents because I don't understand what's happening, and my brain's not processing. And that's kind of how it first started to manifest itself. And then it started to be like panic attacks with a lot of things, like helicopter fire. I smelling every time the toast would be burning in the house, or, I would have to run around the house and smelling all the outlets. Like it was starting to get like that. It crept up on me.
Mhm.
I went from being able to multitask to just not being able to handle more than one or two things. So I would get something at work. I'd normally be able to do 4 or 5 different things. All of a sudden I'd be working on a project at work. I get one other thing. One more person would come in, and all of a sudden I'm overloaded, paralyzed, can't, do all that helmet fire. But that was after you did like 15 different things coming at you. And then, anger and sleep and all. So eventually my wife was like, you need to go talk to somebody because you are not okay. Like,
Mhm.
she had been telling me since I came back from deployment, but I was kind of in like denial because I didn't go to a combat zone. I did like law enforcement, predictions and stuff. And, we had some interesting experiences, and, we shot at a lot of people, but like at the same time, I think, I thought that was relegated for people at war, and like I didn't really think anything that I did could have caused, that. But once I accepted it and started talking to somebody, I realized I did. I PTSD, and it was affecting me downstream. Um, so I started talking about kind of scary experiences that I could remember. This trauma therapist recommended I start journaling about it. So I would journal about all my experiences. She wanted me to share them in a setting. I didn't want to talk about myself with random people and drug cartel stuff because it was so fresh. It had all just I just came off of it. So she just said to fictionalize it. So I started changing people, places, things. So I was essentially writing short stories. But it was super cathartic, just, talking about them because I'd never really talked, not even to my wife, like I don't, or my family, like freak everybody out about all the things that you went through while they didn't know where you were and stuff like that for months at a time. So yeah, so I started talking through them and really analyzing how it was making me feel because I really was having problems. So it started helping me. It started healing me. It was like a super cathartic thing. I didn't need the therapist, and it was just the writing is all I needed. I just need to write about it and express it, and all of a sudden I started to feel like a normal human being again, socially, everything. And I was like, well, something to this. I'm going to start, trying to put it to you, not just right before work for nothing. Like I'm a 4 a.m. wake up guy, so I'd write from 4 to 7 before work. And I was just doing these little journals and stuff. So I was a history major. I was like, I'm going to write a history book or something. And I started doing that, but it wasn't it wasn't as cathartic as a fiction story, like getting into a story. So I just, I got some inspiration and I was like, maybe I'll try fiction. So I started writing my first book, and the process was like just fantastic. And that was where I developed the Ethan Kane character in this book. I wrote one book, and right away I wrote another one. I wrote another Ethan Kane book right after that. And then I didn't tell anybody I was writing, like threw it all away. I didn't even tell my wife. I was like, whatever, I got to focus on like my job, and like, this is stupid. And then there I deleted everything, deleted all copies on my computer, literally
Really?
gone. Then I ended up finding, after we had moved and I did transition stuff, I plugged my computer in one day, and you know how sometimes like on the cloud or in your computer, there's like one file that's just like left somewhere, and you don't really know how. You thought you deleted everything. So it was just one copy of the manuscript that I wrote, your first Ethan Kane book. And I was like, oh, let me just read it. Like, life had settled back down. So I read it and I was like, man, I kind of like this. Like, I would read this. So I sent it to my brother and I was like, hey man, I'm writing. And he was like, okay. And I was like, I wrote this book. Can you just do me a favor? My brother does not pull punches. I was like, can you just read it and tell me? I was like, I know it's probably really rough. But can you just tell me if that's some kind of naturality here or if I should just stop this now? He read it. 2 weeks later, he got back to me and he was like, I think you should keep going. So, and that's all he said. And so I was like, okay. So I just started trying to hone it. I wrote, another book after that and kept trying to edit and learn my craft, like just kept working at it. And then I started trying to, so after I wrote the third book, I found an agent. He went out with my first two Ethan Kane books. And it was not a good experience. Like, it was almost like a cautionary tale. Like, if you just, a lot of times, it was an agent at a big agency. I don't want to say what his name is. I don't want to, call him out, make him feel bad or whatever, but,
Sure.
he's not a very good agent. For me, I was so excited, after, hundreds of rejections, like, wow, an agent wants to talk to me. An agent wants to pick me up. Like, I didn't ask the right questions. I didn't do my homework. I was like, oh, big agency, like, vice president of the agency, all this stuff. And, so I went with him, and, a bad agent can almost kill your career before it even starts, or derail it, because they're going to go on submission and put your work out there to people, and those people will never read it again and might disregard you again forever.
Right.
And then you're going to sit around and wait and stress out, and you're not going to keep moving forward. You're going to like sit still. So once I kind of started to get a bad feeling about him, I decided to just keep writing. So I had 3 books written, and that's where I wrote this book. that you read now. So I was like, I'm going to do another Ethan Kane book, but I'm going to do it a little different. And this was like where, I took kind of the raw, um, the raw kind of, the characters was unchanged and the characters were unchanged. It was that I was going to infuse the series with something different. And that's where I brought in the espionage element. I brought in a little more of the military thriller element. It was a little more straight, adventure before. I brought in the paranormal element. I brought in the different elements of things that I liked that I shied away from because I thought the market wouldn't want them. Like, I'm going to go all on what I really want and do something completely different.
Yeah.
And, I did what people tell you not to do in the writing bubble, which is like, look at the market. Don't look at the market, write what you want. Well, like you have to, I mean, I realized was before I was writing what I wanted to write and nobody really wanted it. And now, and at that point I was like, okay, I'm going to look like I started analyzing authors that were successful. I started looking at Dan Brown. He had a couple books out and nobody knew about Digital Fortress. Nobody knew about Angels and Demons. Like nobody knew about, I loved Digital Fortress and there was another one that's slipping my mind right now with the Arctic. But anyways, those were great books and they became popular later. It was only after Angels and Demons hit that all of a sudden everyone was like, oh, Dan Brown's great. And it's like, well, Dan Brown was always great.
Right.
Like nobody knew about him. And I was just like, well, what was so different about the Da Vinci Code? And, he had honed in on a gap in the market and there was nothing there. There was, there were a lot of people interested and there's a lot of TV shows and documentaries that were doing really well about those kinds of themes of, these religious conspiracies. And so he just melded them and you got, and nobody thought it was going to be successful. And all of a sudden, it was a really successful book. So I didn't have any versions that I was, that I'm going to be or successful or anything. I'm going to take something, I'm going to try and fill the air. Thing is that there's interest. Everybody loves Indiana Jones. Everybody loves James Bond and all things like that. But it seemed to me that every time someone redid Adventure, it was either a copy of Indiana Jones, so much so that it was just ridiculous, or anytime they try and do Adventure, they for some reason it ends up being campy. Like it ends up being like this joke, like a big, like this fee that just came out through whatever. Like it looked kind of cool in the previews, but man, it was this campy joke movie. They make a joke of adventure stories. And that's not what Indiana Jones was. And that's not what it was cool. And I'm not saying I copied that. I looked at why those things were exciting to everybody. And everybody tries to embody that feel of the first Indiana Jones movie. But for some reason they can't grasp, like at least in Hollywood or like what actually made people like it. So I really just tried to look into that, and it was because it was fresh, it was different, the event.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
I've heard that advice before at Thriller Fest, the good advice, which is write the book that you want to write and don't try to time the market or don't try to write to the market, so to speak. So do you think, is that more of a subconscious thing with you and other authors, where they're simply writing what they want to write, the book they would love to read, and they're not worried so much about, well, this is hot in the market right now, or this is what literary agents, are looking to push right now?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both because I added the military thriller element to the book because I knew it was something that people wanted with my background. It would be a hook for a publisher to be like, okay, this person's military background. I got to have some military thriller there to drive into the market. So I was looking at it that way, but I was about to my thought there with nobody wanted this book either. And and it was unchanged. And ironically, my agent doesn't probably like me saying this part. Like he was the soon to be publisher at Putnam for 22 years. He was an editor there, Mark Tavani, and before he was let go in the whole PRH Simon Sturgill, they let go of all the top executive people, and he was one of the ones let go. He became an agent. He ended up becoming my agent, but it's ironic because even he rejected the Ethan Kane series. Tom Colgan, who's my editor now, rejected. And nothing changed in the book. It was just my attitude about it changed, and eventually my representation through Mark Tavani, is what changed as well. So good representation is absolutely key if you want to get with a big five publisher, 100%. Because he was pivotal. He was pivotal in helping me craft a pitch. That's all of it in terms of getting a publisher, and then the relationships that agent has are crucial because the editor gets so overworked. They're so busy, and they don't read at work. They read on the weekends, so they're reading on weekends. They're at work doing all the other publishing stuff for all the books that they have, and then they're getting submissions. So they're only going to read the submissions that they really think are going to be good. So they kind of lean towards the reputation of the person sending it to them. So reputation is key. But then I wrote this book. I wrote another book after this, which is like a spin-off of this book with like just a straight spy thriller. And then I wrote a movie, which is a prequel to this Ethan Kane series. Actually, is also in the book. It's called Project Balboa. It's more about the counter drug mission stuff. That's actually out with Ray Mendoza right now, attached to direct. So that's kind of cool. So we'll see if that ends up happening. But so I wrote a lot of stuff. Nothing happened for me. And, before I got with Mark, over 400 rejections, and I gave up. I completely gave up. And the whole reason I met Mark is because Mike Madden is a author. He used to write for Clancy. He had the Drone series. Then he wrote for Clancy before Don Bentley. And then he picked up Oregon File series, The Hustlers. And he's a guy. He had been my rep for like we've become friends through the Cussler writing competition. I met him, and he was just helped me become a better writer, and we just became good friends. I told him I was going to give up. I was just going to self-publish it and recoup the money I'd lost, and I had some family crisis, and I was like I got to refocus. I got to cut this out because, dedicating myself to it, I cut all hobbies. All my friend group got really small. I just on family, work, and writing, and that was it. So, pretty boring life, but it was just, for me, it was exciting because I was really, I feel like that, to really get better at writing, but also to be able to keep more books. That first book was not publishable that I wrote. The second book wasn't publishable. Doing it. And if it ruins your life when you write a book, if when you write, you have the legs to keep, it's not going to want to. I really need to find a way to make it energetically work with my life, or didn't affect anything. And in order to do that, I had to cut a lot of the strap off of my life.
Did you say 400 rejections? I wasn't sure if I heard that right.
Yeah.
400.
You did. I kept a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, because I was hacking. So I would do, because at one point I had 5 scripts. So when I wrote the first book, I immediately started querying it. So I would send out like 10 queries a week. And then, I had the second book. And then, so by the time I was onto the fourth book, what you read right now, I had 3 other books that I had one I'd been querying for years. The other one I had been querying behind that. And so every time, they got rejected or they went past a certain timer that would turn it red in my thing, I would like onto the next part of my list. And then
Wow.
eventually I would cycle back with a different one. So, but once I got to 400, I just, I like literally was like, no, I'm done. I'm not
Right.
going to query anymore. 'Cause it's just a waste of my time, absolute waste of my time. And, that's when I was going to self-publish everything. Had covers made up. I was all ready to go. I was all in, financially invested in self-publishing. Mike Madden called me up one day and he was trying to talk me out of it, even though he talked me into self-publishing. Then once I was like, he talked me out of it. He was like, "Hey, I have someone who I know, used to be an editor, he just became an agent. I can't guarantee you anything, but I can at least try and still talk to you."
Right.
So
Right.
he reached out to him, said some nice things. Now Mark Tavani, he's edited CJ Box, he's edited so many people. Cussler. He did not need to pick up a debut. Let's just say that. Like he
Right.
had plenty of people knocking on his like things. Developed a really great relationship with Mike, and he saw how hard I worked at it, and he believed in me. And so he said decided to talk to me. So we chatted. He decided to read this book that you're reading now, and then he asked for everything else I'd written. So he read all 5 of my books and the screenplay that I wrote.
Wow.
And
That's
after he read
great.
all my work, yeah, he read every single one, and then we had a talk about what it would be like to work with me. So he gave me some changes on things, like just to get a flavor for how I would react to that, to like making big changes, not necessarily to just see how I would react. Would I? Okay, yep, I'll figure it out. And once he found out that I was the person he could work with, collaborate with, he
Hmm.
was like, okay, like if you want to do it took about 3 months of vetting, but then we went out with it, and about 2 months after submission, we got one offer on Tom Colgan at
Mm.
PRH. So,
That's yeah, his name sounds really familiar to me. Is does he attend Thriller the Pitch Fest segment at Thriller
yep,
Fest?
he does now. He did it 2 years in a row now. Yep,
Yeah, I
Thriller Fest.
think I pitched him. I'm
You very
almost
well may
100%
have.
positive I pitched him. And he was interested, and he gave me his email address. So once my manuscript's done, I'll be doing the same thing that you're doing, which is trying to get things submitted. So
If he gave you his email, that's really great. So good on you.
yeah, well, I had wondered if everybody I pitched to was interested. So I wasn't sure if that was if people were just kind of blowing smoke, or if that was a real positive indication about some of the work that I'm doing. So
I think it is, at least in my experience, if people get so many submissions, if they're not interested, they're not going to waste their time reading your
mm,
stuff.
yeah,
So, and, I happen to personally know Mark. We're very good friends now. We've become
sure.
very good friends on this. And yeah, I can't speak for him, but I can say that like, he is a very gracious person, but he's also very blunt too. Like,
Mhm.
cause he's got to be with his time. But he doesn't give his time out freely. So,
Well, that's
yeah,
really, as someone who is, a few steps back in the process where you are now, that's what I want. I want somebody
yeah,
who's blunt. I want the truth, just like you did with your brother.
yep,
It's like,
yeah.
is there something here? Should I continue with this? Well, one question I did want to ask you was how much time, what's your writing schedule like? What's your
Sure.
so how much time can you write and write well in a day?
Well, that varies. My process is a little bit different than other people. I write very fast. I've learned that's a gift of mine. When I first started writing, I thought it was crap because I wrote so fast. I assumed you had to take a year to write a book, and I was
Right.
like, this must suck because it didn't take me a year, even close.
Yeah.
So, but some people are just different with different things, and I wrote a lot growing up, but it was like history papers and that kind of writing. When I was in the Navy, I did a lot of reports. I did so like writing, being able to do research and
Mhm.
put a product out or your thought. I was very good at that. And when I came to writing fiction, I found that to be a lot easier than writing like nonfiction stuff or reports or something like that. I honestly did. And so when it came to so my process is 30,000 foot view. I have an idea. I don't start writing about the idea until it's been cooking in my head for a very long time. So
Mhm.
every idea that I have now that I've been doing, I've had for years, and they've just been in my head, and I kind of feeling when I'm ready to go, like when it clicks, when I feel like all the pieces come together, and I'm like, okay, that idea clicked. Like this book, for instance, I had that Mojda Zehati character in my head, and
Mhm.
what she was in the book. I
Mhm.
had that, but I didn't have a book around it,
Mhm.
and so that she just lingered in my head until I found the other elements that I was like, okay, these are all coming together now, and I've got what I want for this dynamic story. So I'll get an idea, I'll just ruminate on it, and then once I've got like all the pieces together, like okay, I'm going to start this project. Like I don't write every single day. I don't write 65 days a year to build
Mhm.
it. I don't think you need to do that to build a habit. Like working out, for instance, like work out Monday through Friday. Every couple months, I take a week off, like let my body rest, let my mind rest, have some cheat days, right? Like you got to do things to sustain something, right? Like you're
Right.
just gonna burn out if you just go. And writing is the same way. Like if you have a family and you have little kids, like I do, like the
Mhm.
weekends are sacred. Like I don't write on the weekend. I treat it like a job, and that's how I made it part of my life for years when I wasn't making any money at it, is I made it part of my life. So I have a job. I start at 8 o'clock. I end at 5. So I'm not going to be doing any writing after a full day of work and kids when I come home. So, I knew I had to write in the morning. I wake up early. Just I'm an early riser and the Navy help. I'm a 4 a.m. guy up before the alarm. So I get up, get a cup of coffee or whatever, and I sit down and I start writing. I set a timer from 4 to 7. No one's
Mhm.
awake. Nothing's going on. I don't have a special office or anything to write in. I mean, I have this space, but I don't write here. I write on the couch or on, the table or in bed with my son, if he needs me to sleep. I have 4 year, wherever I gotta be with the laptop, and it's just a commitment, no distractions, which is really easy in the morning,
Right.
until the timer goes off at 7. The timer goes off at 7, and I get a workout in to clear my head from, Ernest Hemingway talks about that. Like Ian Fleming did the same thing. Not that I got that from those guys. I just learned that, I was doing that anyways. And I realized, oh, that's a thing, because otherwise I'll be thinking about the book all day long
Right.
at work. So clear my head with a workout. And now I feel so accomplished. I'm like, I got my writing in, I got my workout in. Now I can start work and just let the be the day.
Right.
And 3 hours is a good chunk of time because
Yeah.
you need like the first 30 to 45 minutes just to get that momentum going.
Mhm.
And then that momentum, you're on cruise control and you get a good bit done. So I write on average about 200 words, depending where the book is at. Like sometimes it'll average around 30 if it's like a part of the book that I'm really like know what I'm doing. But wind a little bit, like when I start a project, I don't dilly daddle. Like so, while I've been thinking about that idea, I'll find headlines and I'll be folder constantly, in a giant folder, or acquiring books and flagging them and not doing deep research, but doing like surface research, what
Yeah.
I call like in history, like surface research, where you're getting what you need to research together. You're compiling it like a historiographical essay.
Mhm.
And once the idea is there, I do like a big picture outline of just like what the beginning, the end is, all the kind of elements of it, where the big twists are going to be. That's what a story is, right? It's a bunch of big things you didn't see coming. So
Mhm.
once the framework that is in my head, I put that framework down, and then I outline the story. So I outline all the chapters. So it's got to go from A to Z. It has to logically sense. I don't have all the details. I don't, some chapter, and it's just, sometimes it could be like a full set of dialogue between two people, and like the whole chapter is very detailed because I had this image in my head. Other chapters could be like he gets away from X, or like,
Right.
or breadcrumb Z is revealed. Like, so I'll lay all that out and I'll take a lot of thought into the outline, like arranging it, like, because I'm always thinking about the reader, how I'm setting it up, what tactic I'm using to delay information, and where the big scenes are going to be that you really need to make big scenes. And so I'm doing all that stuff in the outline. And if the outline works and the outline, doesn't read, because I don't put a lot in the outline, it's just, more like bullets and stuff. Mm-hmm. But it needs to flow. It needs to be logical. And then once I get the outline, I off the outline. So then I look at the outline. I'm like, okay, I need this information here because this is pivotal. This needs to make sense of why this is linked to this. So now I need to know that. I need to understand how this person can do that. And then I research. If they can't, I'll find a way to make it as authentic as I can with what I'm trying to do. And sometimes you can't, sometimes you got to change it, but I'll research. And then once I get all my research, I take my research notes, I put it all in a big file, and then I go back to my outline and I flesh the outline out with some of my research. And that whole process takes 3 to 4 weeks, more like 3 weeks, that from outline to research. Because I don't go down the rabbit hole people do with research.
Yeah.
Months and months and months and months and months. Like, so you and I, like, and maybe we have a leg up because you've been in federal service for a lifetime, and you're probably writing about stuff that's incorporating. So, you don't have to research about the FBI. You don't have to research about, some of the stuff you're going to use. So I think we have a little bit of a leg up in that respect versus someone like Mark Graney, who, he wasn't in the military. So he puts himself in through tactics training and stuff, which is incredible.
Right.
He's like the hardest working guy in publishing. But yeah, so I do all the research that I need to put it together. And then I just start. I go before I feel like I'm ready, because I've got my research together. I know the story, and then I just start writing. And I'm kind of a pan at that point, because when I sit down, I know what the purpose of the chapter is, but I don't. It's not necessarily as fleshed out as some people do with their outlines. So then I'll just go, and I'll change the outline as I go. So if something happens in the story, or I come up with something new, I'll totally just, change the outline for the next 3 days, and I'll go ahead like Friday at the end of the morning on Friday when I write, I kind of look ahead to the next chapters of what I anticipate to write next week. And I'll be like, okay, where am I at now? Where am I going? And towards the end of the book, I'm not even looking at the outline anymore, because I know exactly where it's going.
Right.
So that's kind of my process. The whole, when I'm done, I do about 8 drafts. So I do the first, and I never go back. I never rewrite anything. I just keep going forward, momentum forward, finish the first draft.
Yeah.
Even if it's wrong, even if I change a whole character's name or I change a whole plot point, I don't go and fix it all. Just notes for myself. So I'll put tagged notes for myself, like, hey, fix this whole chapter. I've put that before, like, hey, fix this whole chapter to work with what you just did.
Yeah, right.
Because my first read after it's all done, I don't let it sit in a drawer, because Salman Rushdie said this in a class one time, and I believe 100%. When you type the end of your first draft, that is not the time to put it in a drawer, because when you type the end, you all of a sudden, your brain knows exactly what the book needs. Like, it knows exactly what it's anemic in, because you hit the end, the story is complete. Brain, your mind. Chapter 2 needs this now, and this needs, and there's a hole here, and I need to set this up better here. And then I have all these notes to myself to fix. So my first draft, or my first edit through, is where I clean up all the mess, and I sweep it all up and get rid of that. And then I'll sit down and actually read it. So after all the mess, I do a read, and I jot up with all these different notes that are plot notes. I don't do like line editing. It's all plot, character,
right.
I need more research here, whatever. Because I write really lean. So like this book you read was 85,000 words. So when it was done, it was probably about 75,000. And then I add, like I purposefully write lean in my outline, To just
Interesting.
get to the point. And then
Mhm.
I end up adding. I've never had to cut anything. I turned in books to Tom, and it's got a publishing date now already, June 2nd, and we turned it in February. So it's coming out next year in June, and
Oh,
not
awesome.
a single thing was cut from it at all. And I actually added a little bit more. So I've found that writing lean, it makes so then you have more room to expand where because it's hard to understand your pacing. You can put your pacing up on a whiteboard or something and be like, okay, but then when you actually read it, you can see where maybe you done a little bit more. And that's where you can kind of go in depth. So for me, this is all
Of course.
what
Yeah.
I've done.
Right.
So yeah, so then I'll add more. So over the course of my like 7 revisions, I'll about 10,000 words. Just character, and each
Mhm.
time it's a layered pass. So I'll go through and just do grammar. I'll go back through and just do one whole character's dialogue. I'll go back through and do um, just focus on technical details. Like I'll go back
Mhm.
through and be like, okay, I'm gonna basically fact check myself, and that is actually a really important step because a lot of times when I write about military stuff, about flying, about diving, anything that I know a lot about, I don't
Right.
research it. So I just write. So then
Mhm.
I got to go back through and make sure I remember things correctly. And, because a lot of times you get it backwards because, it's been like, you know, a long time.
Right.
Uh,
Well,
so yeah, do that. And yeah, it's a layered process.
that's really interesting to hear. One of the things I struggle with is I feel like, oh, it's got to be perfect the first time I write it, which is stupid.
Yeah.
And have you ever read Writing Down the Bones?
No,
Oh,
nope.
it's an excellent book. If I could recommend one book on writing, it's that one. And
That's it.
she talks about allowing yourself to write garbage. So sit down, write garbage, allow yourself to do that, or what you perceive to be garbage, which probably is not garbage.
Yeah.
So it's very enlightening to hear your process, uh, which is not tremendously different from other authors I've talked to. So I really appreciate
Yeah.
that point that you're making. I wanted to go back a little bit. Did you say you do about
Sure.
2,500 words a day? I didn't quite catch. So was
Yeah.
it 2,500 words
Yep.
a day? Okay.
Yeah. I got that arbitrary number. I worked up that number. Um, and now it's a straight average. Mark Rainey as like he I felt a lot. I thought his great series, which had all of it, was fantastic.
Mhm.
And I just thought he was a very hard working author. I loved his story about how he came into publishing really hard. And I related to that. Someone who had a job was trying to write because that's how he started out.
Right.
And I saw how much he wrote in a day and then he did 2 books a year. So I told myself, okay, he doesn't have it. This is his full-time job and that's what he does. So if being a stubborn military aviator, we're always trying to be better than the other guy. I was like, okay, like what I'm made of. Like if Mark Rainey, and this is nothing on Mark. Mark is it. I've met him personally, fantastic human being and
Yeah.
an amazing writer. But
Yeah.
he was my pace horse. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go up against the best and see what I'm capable of. And it's just me. I don't have a publishing deal like that at the time, and I'm just like, okay, so I'm 2,500 words that once, and I'm gonna try and do it in 3 hours, and I'm
Mhm.
gonna try and write 2 books a year. So
Mhm.
then I wrote my first 2 books, one in 6 months and the other one in 6 months, and then
Yeah.
I got to like 2,000 words, a day, and then the next 3 books I wrote in 1 year. This one was the middle book, and was at 2,500 words. It's like, okay, fine, I can do it. I can do 3 books a year with a job. So with no job, that's what I was thinking in my head, like,
Right.
just trying to push myself. Yeah.
Right.
But
Right.
well, I mean, I don't know if it or not. I mean, I'm here, so some voice inside of me was pushing me along.
I think that's good. I think it's good to have that, that inner coach, kind of pushing you to, you know, expand your boundaries, see how far you can go, challenge yourself. I think that's a good impulse. Let's change track a little bit. I'm curious,
Sure.
how did the Danger Close podcast come about?
Just through a friend. So,
Oh,
my friend Chris Albanese, I don't know, C. Albanese is his right name,
yep,
former Secret Service agent, his wife's a Secret Service agent. They
yep,
protect the president. She still does. Uh, he's crew reviews. Yes, guy. We met through the Kessler writing competition. He
right.
won it in 2021. I was a
Okay.
finalist 22. He was a judge. That's where I met and met Chris. Um, I had been following their podcast, like learning how to write, like from other authors,
Yep.
and so we met. We quickly became friends, formed like a little writing friendship, past work back and forth. At one point, agent actually, um, uh, yeah, we just became really friends. And then when I started uh, getting, I got a publishing deal and things started moving forward. He's just such a great human and such a big support and as a friend that he knows knows Jack and reached out to him and asked him if he'd be willing to have me on the show, and
Oh,
so he
very
was. So
cool.
I'm and yeah and Jack didn't have to have me on the show at all. I'm a
Sure.
new author, and he was just gracious enough to on, and it was really cool because he was and I said this on his show, and it's true, and I saw him on the Joe podcast and I didn't know he was, and he was
Uh,
talking about how he wrote fiction, and that was where I turned from writing a history book to deciding to write fiction, because I thought you had to have like some kind of creative writing degree. I had no idea what being a fiction author was,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
had just been writing these stories, so I I thought it was way out of my reach. I wasn't even going to try it. And when I saw him on that show talk about it that way, I was like, okay, he didn't have any of that stuff. Navy guy, just like me, just read a lot, and that's all. And here he is. And I was like, boom, like that's all I needed to hear. And I was off.
Very cool. Yeah.
So
He's been,
it was really nice to be on his show and be able to tell him that. And yeah, so and we actually have a lot of mutual friends too, because I'm working with Ray Mendoza on that movie, and Ray did the Terminal List, and so they're in the same circle.
yeah, he's been an inspiration to a lot of people. And to reiterate what you said, a great guy and also very generous with his time. I do follow the Crew Reviews podcast. I think that's a good group of guys and really informative, interesting podcasts. So that's
Yep.
that's a good follow for anybody that's interested in the writing subject, authors, anything of that nature. So I don't want to keep you too long. We've been on here for a good while. I know you've had a UAP experience of your own, which
Yep.
doesn't really relate, I guess, much to the book. Um, is that something that you
No.
want to talk about a little bit, or
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I
yeah?
did like 2 hour, or it was like three. So we edited it down to two. Tony Merkel at the Confessionals podcast. I,
Ah,
come out with a. So I had an experience like a lot of pilots that I know have had, and it was very similar to the ones people have seen out TikTok videos and things like that. I mean, it was around this. It was in 2013. This is was official disclosure. Like now, Navy pilots have like an avenue to disclose these things, and it's open.
right.
Back then, nobody really talked about that stuff.
Hmm.
And I had reached out with Ryan Graves like years ago as well, just to like when
Yep.
disclosure first started. I was, oh, I'll put the optional sheet too. I don't know what the hell we chased. Um, now that I, you know, doing this author thing, getting out there and stuff, I'm like, hey, well, it's really hard, even though I'm Random House publisher in the world, like it's still to do everything. And, I'm so gracious that you've had me here and you back have me on.
Sure.
But you got to ways to get out there, recognized and stuff. So I just started, I would just be on any pod out there. And then, my wife knew about that story and there's nothing with the book, but she was like, nothing has to do with get some eyes on, you have some interesting stories. Like, why don't you tell them? It doesn't have to be anything about the book. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh my God, you're totally right. Like I read to Merkel and told him talked about. There's lots of witnesses though. We're actually trying to get the video now, but uh, he was like to have you on it, and it was cool. So I got to tell that story. But yeah, do you want me to retell it?
Yeah, I mean, as much as you want to
Sure.
tell. I've talked to Graves before. I've done several town hall columns with regard to the UAP subject. I mean, it's something I take very
Yeah.
seriously. And even from the
Yep.
perspective of government transparency, for people that don't really buy the whole, well, what, are these objects that we don't understand, that don't conform to what we understand about physics? If you don't even buy into that, just the government transparency aspect, I think, is vitally important. So it's something I take
And
very seriously.
yeah, and like I agree with Ryan Graves' position as an aviator, safety issue.
Yes.
Like a lot of the people he's talked to, you know, their risk uh, is doing high risk testing, all kinds of like that. Like, I was on a million when that was a thing as well, and like uh, it's flat out. It's a safety hazard.
Yeah.
Pilots A know what they are, and B to have areas like that. Call off. We've called off an entire live fire exercise away through, our offshore area. Just a lone whale. We've called off an entire live fire. Everybody's safe for
Right.
a whale. So like some other small aircraft coming through there, like blows my mind that there's not more interest in it. But yeah, so for
Uh,
me, um, uh, most of that, it's actually ironic. I just think today, someone in Congress released that it's Lockheed Martin technology for the Tic Tac UAPs, and I don't know
no
if that's
way.
true or not, but I did speculate in the Confessionals podcast with him, based on what I've done with government contracts that they are very stovepiped. They're 30 years, 40 years ahead of
Mhm.
the technology that we're currently developing in the public domain for test and evaluation, like the Joint Strike Fighter, like the Boeing, MQ-25. These were developed 2 decades ago and
Mhm.
decades ago in some instances, and
Right.
and they're just now coming out. So to wrap your head around that, these companies are competing with each other. They're light years ahead of where they are now and stacking the deck so that they know they have something better than the next thing to get another contract, to get another contract. There's a ton of money involved in it.
Sure.
So it's a business, and it's all proprietary information. You sign NDAs when you get onto these things, heavy NDAs, and these people have a
Mhm.
lot of money to come after you. So I think it's a plausible explanation that there could be some kind of, not all of the but some of them could be our own military developed
Sure. Mhm.
companies building stuff and testing it on us, because that's the best way to gain real-time data to sell it to the government, that like, hey, your current sensors couldn't track us, figure us out, like catch it,
Mhm.
so I think that is possible. But my instant, like, I don't claim to know what it was. All I know is we were in the Pacific Ocean at night doing a counter narcotics mission. I was on MVGs. We had a crew of 5. We had 2 Coast Guard snipers on board, and we interdict drug boats. So we'll disable their engines with a 50 caliber sniper rifle, and then we'll do sniper overwatch for boarding teams of TACLET, Coast Guard special operations teams that will board the vessel and take control of the vessel. So we had intelligence that there was going to be a big handoff between 2 go fast in the middle of the ocean at night. So we end up locating the pickup boat. We ended up locating the boat, the first go fast. We were standing off, watching them, waiting for them to link up, verifying the intelligence. We finally confirmed it all, and once it was middle of the night, we decided to move in. Once we got the place in place, standing off, about 10, 12-ish miles. So then we decide to go just like a sting operation. We go in first, turn all of our lights, nobody exchanged gunfire or anything.
Mhm.
But what they did was the boats So we decided to take the boat that was closest to our rib asset and then our naval ship. So we decided to push that boat into them. And so we actually didn't even have to disable them. We just pushed them into the rib and talked our rib onto them. And then they took positive control of them and took them down with the narcotics. And we had the other one. So our helicopter had radar, very surface air and water radar called the APS 124.
Mm.
It's a unique to the H60 Bravo. And we had FLIR thermal camera, forward looking infrared. And then we were on MVG. So we were monitoring the other on radar. But, we're chasing these boats 50 feet over the water. We got a gunner on it. One pilot out the other pilot's FLIR. There's a lot going on inside. We get the radar. Kind of like lost focus on the other boat. Get this one. Got him. And then we're like, okay, let's reset, find that contact, got him on radar. Let's turn back and go pick him. So he was about 2 miles-ish away and on radar about 60. And that's pretty fast for a go fast. I mean, these guys have it's like long cigarette boats. They got 350 horsepower engines out the back, but it's choppy South Pacific Ocean. These things go probably 7 flat water.
Mm-hmm.
Of the ocean, they don't have flashlights. It's just black, choppy water. They tend to move more like 40 knots.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that it was hauling at like 60, 65, we were like, wow, this guy's like really trying to get away from us.
Right.
So we picked him up with ease, and then we locked the FLIR on him, and we're flying towards him. Like I said, we're only like 2 miles away. Not FLIR video is really clear. We start kind of looping around to cut him off. Well, the thermal picture, we keep switching between white hot, black hot, like was not materializing like a boat. I had done this for 3 full deployments like this. We knew what a boat looked like on FLIR. It's anyone who sees thermal camera when you get really close, and for people who don't know, 2 miles on a FLIR camera is a very detailed picture for the kind of FLIR that we have on the helicopter. It's not like a little pair of binoculars. It's a very, very advanced zoom lens. So like, and we're closing distance. So, we should be seeing what they're wearing, their faces, the rooster tail out the engines heat themselves. The churning water creates friction, creates heat. The rooster tail, the wake, the water hitting the bow is going to, as the water's breaking, is going to create friction. The temperature of the metal on board, fuel cans, everything is going to create this vivid thermal picture. It just never turned into a boat. And we got to 800 yards, and it was off of our about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and it's closing on us because we headed it off. So it gets 800 yards, and I'm looking at this thing on FLIR, and we're at about 100 feet. It wasn't any boat. It was just a mass of white hot moving over and what was really weird is where we all realized, including the people on the ship, because they can watch our sensors, everybody was like, what the hell are we chasing at this point? Because there was no churn in the water like a boat. The water was not churned up. It was being parted like when a helicopter flies over the water. Just kind of spreads the water. And and then at about 800 yards, it stopped dead. Just didn't like slow down and slosh water forward. And there was no water movement more. And then it descended into the water. Gone. And then we spent the next 10, 15 minutes trying to find it again. Didn't know what, we kept thinking it was our sensors that were wrong. And there's a lot of these guys. We were very confused because we thought we were in the middle of an operation, thought we were chasing the boat that we just split up from. And then, combine the fact that these guys, sometimes what they'll do is they'll stop if they think they can hide from you. They'll stop their boat, they'll cover themselves with tarps, and they'll just sit there in the water and make you try and find them on radar or FLIR. We're assuming that that's what they did. They just stopped in the water and we're going to find them again. But so we're flying around trying to find them. And I think I said 10, 15 minutes. That exaggeration. We were on top for like a couple of minutes trying to find him because almost immediately, a couple minutes, yeah, it was a couple of minutes afterwards, we find the radar contact a couple miles away, and we end up going to investigate that, and it's the boat. And they were moving at a steady rate. The boat had them the whole time. So whatever we were chasing was not the boat. They didn't stop
Right.
and cover themselves up. So, when you're in the moment doing that, you're thinking, make it make sense. Maybe we have a malfunction. Maybe the sensor's working right. Maybe I'm seeing this incorrectly. You're trying to figure out, because you're not thinking that I'm chasing some unknown thing that's going to drop into the water.
Right.
Yeah, so it was very confusing to us. It wasn't until we landed, we got everything to process the detainees, to process the drug, all that stuff. 'Cause, this is law enforcement. We got to take everyone's fingerprints, and we got to take photos of all the evidence. Like, it's a huge operation for chain them to the side of the ship. We got to feed them. We got to, do, HIV tests. We got to do like all this stuff that
Right.
people don't realize when you like detain someone. And then we got to take care of the aircraft, and we're putting that away and everything like that. We got to go write our reports. We got to write our report for the, for the package. And then finally we're like, okay, let's go eat breakfast. And then we're like, let's go to combat and rewatch that video. So then we all went to combat and we rewatched the FLIR video and the radar picture and over and over and over and over again. And we all just couldn't figure out what the heck that thing was.
Right.
And it just defied all logic to us. So, yep. That
Well,
was a good
I,
place.
I agree with you. I think the vast majority of UAPs have a rational explanation other than a non-human
Yeah.
created, vehicle. But there are still a lot of instances out there where none of the explanations apply.
Right.
So, it begs a very big question, but I tend to approach it from a government transparency issue. I think it has a much broader appeal, like Graves does with the aviation safety angle as well. So, I've had the opportunity to talk to Graves some, and he's contributed comments to some of my articles before. So, to me, it's a very interesting and relevant topic. So I appreciate you sharing that experience. It's really interesting. I don't want to keep you too much longer. I could talk to you much, much longer. It's a real pleasure. And I really have enjoyed reading Blood and Treasure. It's an excellent book. The story is entertaining from beginning to end. So I wish you all the best with this book. And I definitely would love to stay in touch. And I'll be writing a review for Town Hall if the editors accept it. I'm going to hope to have that out by next week, and I'll shoot you the link to that as well. So,
thank you.
Appreciate you taking time to speak with me on the podcast today. And
anytime,
I look forward to talking to you about your next book. Now, you did say you've got one coming out in June. Is that correct?
The second one in the series comes out June 2nd, 2026.
Awesome. I'll be looking forward to that one. So thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it.